The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the latest episode of Wrestling with Johners Live. We are live across YouTube, across Twitch, and across Facebook Live. And today, I've got an awesome guest, none other than one of the standout performers on the UK scene in 2022, Wild Boar Mike Hitchman. Mike, great to have you on the show. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, mate. Not bad. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I've been looking forward to this one. But for anybody watching live at home, if you've got any questions, you want to get in touch with Mike, sending me questions, any favourite moments from being a fan of Wild Boar, please get in touch. Send them through to us using your chosen device. They'll ping through to us and we'll do our very best to bring them up live on screen. So get in touch now. We want your questions. But Mike, first of all, I have to thank you for coming on the show. But I want to start with 2022 because you've recently come back onto the UK Indies, haven't you? How have you found that experience coming back on to the Indies after four and a half years under the WWE banner? Is it a strange, pleasant experience? Tell us your experience of being back on the Indies so far, then, Mike.
I mean, so when I was on a contract, I could still kind of do bits of indies here and there. So I was still kind of involved as much as I could.
Yeah.
Given the contract obligations. But the main thing is just nice to see everyone again. You know, it's nice to be around all the talent and stuff backstage, and it's nice to see. So even though I have been around and kind of keeping track of it and stuff online and as much as you can, it's nice to see it up close, and you see like a lot of the talent who were really good when I wasn't around as often. When I've come back now, I've properly leveled up. Dan Moloney was my first match back properly on the Indies, and he gave me one of my favorite matches, one of my favorite moments. But I've been on shows with him since then, and he's just gone up a level. Like that. Yeah. That super fight soldier thing is not. It's not a gimmick.
It's a lifestyle.
That's reality, man. Like he's operating on a different level. Yeah. Like us as well. Has gone up another level. Some of the stuff I've seen with him this past weekend with Chris Brooks has been incredible. He wrestled Mark Andrews on the weekend.
He did.
Just gone another fantastic one. And that's just the ones I've recently that come to mind. There's countless others that have
absolutely,
like, you know.
Yeah.
But, I think the scene is great at the minute, to be honest. I really do.
It is. And so I got to sample Slammasters on Sunday. You were there in a four-way. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the UK indie scene, I think since coming back last year, has gone from strength to strength, and there's so many new promotions that have started up in the last 12 months, which is really, really good. But I think just touching on one thing you said there, that people that are maybe bubbling under the surface before 2019, 2020, and before lockdown happened, have now kind of rose to prominence and are really setting the UK, Europe, and further afield ablaze. You mentioned Dan Moloney there. That's 2021, 2022. That's been he's been firing on all cylinders, like Kid there, and so many others. But how would you say the indie scene has changed? Have you noticed any noticeable changes since you've come back? And I know you said you did dates sporadically over the last 4 or 5 years, but have you noticed a particular change in the scene for good or for bad?
I feel like there's a lot of support, you know, like, yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, if I'm totally honest, I've only done a handful since I've been back, so can't really say a massive specific thing, but it's just nice. Everyone's just happy to be wrestling again. I think, you know, we've had a lot of 2 years off and not being able to really do much in front of a live crowd. But I do feel like it's starting to pick back up again now, crowd wise, and I just feel like everyone's kind of like thinking now, right? Okay, this is. Now we're off again. Now we're off and going. And I do feel it's just going to keep on going on the up.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to echo your sentiments, I mean, this past weekend we mentioned Slammasters, but it was a huge weekend for wrestling in the UK. You obviously had Royal Quest in London, the New Japan tour, which I was at, and it was a fantastic show. You had 1PW come back on the Saturday. You had Sovereign Pro, their first show, and various other indies around the UK, and then Slammasters on Sunday. So it was a hot weekend, but I think that just kind of illustrates how vibrant the UK scene is at the moment, and quite an exciting time for you to kind of officially come back full time on the UK Indies.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I don't think that should be sold short, to be honest. So like, I know I heard that Sovereign Pro did 500 people on their first show of the weekend. Obviously, the New Japan shows looked incredible. They had packed houses. John, the promoter of Slammasters, worked his ass off to get people in that building, and he had like over 200 people, I think, in that building, which is his first show he's ran there. And that's not a small feat. It really isn't a small feat.
No.
But to have to get that many people in buildings alone is not a small feat. To do it all in the space of 2 days, at the same time, it's fantastic. That we're looking at like peak Brit Rest levels right there. You know, when it was real hot. That's that type of levels to me. You know, if we can get more of that, excellent.
Well, that's high praise, and from somebody that was kind of there in the peak during the 2016, 2017 when it was kind of at its heights. But let's talk a little bit about Sunday then, because we did meet each other in Cardiff, Slammasters, the Portland House, which is an old kind of banking hall, a kind of a very grand kind of a venue for wrestling. It had marble pillars, chandeliers, and then there was us downstairs, Mike, in what seemed like a bit of a dungeon, but it was actually the old vaults, wasn't it? And I think it doubles up as a nightclub in the weekends. And I was down there with my interview set, and you were down there with the guys in the locker room. So I think there was a bloody electric chair down there as well, which was quite unnerving. But give us your kind of your recollection of Sunday and the match you were in as well, because you were in a four-way, weren't you? And it was like all the matches on Sunday, they were absolutely stellar. It was a fantastic card, a real celebration of Welsh wrestling and British wrestling all under one roof. But give us your experience from Slammasters on Sunday then, Mike.
So the past weekend, I haven't really slept much since Thursday. So Thursday I was up in Manchester for Modern Nomad. Then I had to come back and I had to get on a 7:30. I will get to Slammasters, bear with me. I had to get on a 7:30 flight from Bristol to Paris, then Paris to Helsinki. Did a show in Finland on Saturday. Got a flight back Sunday morning. So I literally came back off the airplane straight to Cardiff, Portland House. So I was a little bit like I was in a bit of a daze, right? I was like, it was great though. It was great to be able to do a weekend like that after so many years of not having a weekend like that. It was a really cool experience, but it was like it was good vibes. Good vibes. There's a lot of there's some guys there who like I've known for years. There's some people I've only just met coming up on the Welsh scene. Obviously, people I've known most of my life in, like Mark Andrews at this point, my best mate Brendan White, and I was able to work with people I've had a hand in training in, Elijah and James Ellis. I've known Danny Duggan for years as well. He's been around a long time, but it was cool to get in there with James Ellis again, who I think he's really gonna. He keeps on the way he's going. He's really going to do something on the British scene. And I think Elijah is an incredibly underrated professional wrestler. Fantastic look, incredibly capable in the ring. I think he just needs that one little thing to tip him over the edge. And I think he's really gonna. I think people are gonna like see. Okay, Elijah's here now. We need to get on his bandwagon. It was like a really nice, really good show. Like I said, yeah, a bit of everything, and that venue was tremendous. I love that venue. I remember I did a show. That's the venue.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I did a show there once. I ran a wrestling show at a wedding that was in that venue, and I remember specifically saying to Brendan White, Brendan White was wrestling Eddie Dennis on that show, and I was in charge of the music and stuff. I wasn't wrestling. I remember saying to Brendan, I had this idea halfway through the show. I went to Brendan, you're going to come out to Taylor Swift Love Story, and I want you to hate the fact that you're coming out to that. And he was like, oh, okay. And in my head, I was like, this is booking genius. This is like promotion genius. And he comes out and he's like hating it. And the crowd and everyone knows Love Story as far as I'm aware. I do anyway, you know. So everyone's singing Love Story to him, and he's like losing his mind, going, shut up. And Eddie Dennis comes out to party hard and party, if you know, and then he gets classic Eddie Dennis reaction coming out to party hard. So it was a nice contrast of, you know, I mean, it was just a really fun day. Anyway, really like the venue. Really
absolutely. I'm going to flash up one.
You were talking about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, you went over. You won the match, which is always good. But I mean, just sticking with the Welsh theme at the moment, because over the last month or two, like I say, it's been a real celebration of pro wrestling around Wales and around Cardiff in particular. Obviously, last month you had the WWE in town, over 60,000 seats in the Principality Stadium. I was there, a fantastic day. You also had ICW in Cardiff over the weekend as well. On the Sunday, we had Progress and TNT. Had the chance to meet you in the Tram Shed. That was a really good couple of shows there. And then, of course, you got Progress coming back later on this month. Like I said, I think South Wales has always had a strong tradition of fantastic indie wrestling, and it's created so many fantastic names over the last, decades really, but certainly over the last 10 to 15 years. But like I say, one thing that Sunday at Slammasters proved to me, and like I say, the few shows that I've been in Cardiff over the last couple of months, was that the fans are just, I think, some of the best fans in the whole of the UK. And I'm not just saying that because you're on the podcast, but like I say, I've seen it with my own eyes and my own ears in the Principality, in the Tram Shed, in the Portland House on Sunday. The Cardiff fans and the Welsh fans are loud and enthusiastic like nobody else.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're incredible. And it's from my memory. I remember when we did the first Attack show in Cathays, and a lot of people came. Were a lot of Mark Andrews' friends, a lot of Eddie Dennis friends, because they were like kind of grew up in Cardiff and stuff. And a lot of them, plus casual fans, didn't really know how to react to wrestling, because it was just not. I mean, the last wrestling that would have been in Cathays would have been NWA UK Hammerlock, where like Fergal Devitt was in there, you know what I mean? Like Wade Barrett as well, people like that. It's just long time ago. So when people were there, I remember being so quiet. We had to work so hard to get any sort of reaction. But then over the years, I feel like myself, Mark, Eddie, Flash, Pete, Brooks, Lycos, Moloney, all the boys, you know, all the Attack boys, Bird, all the Attack boys built something, and girls, sorry, Nixon as well, built up a nice little following and a nice little scene in the Cardiff area, and then this little, which kind of was starting to bleed a little bit in different parts of the country. I'm not saying we're taking credit for it. I just remember seeing when it wasn't like it is now, you know. But yeah, the Slammasters crowd on the weekend were fantastic, and the Modern Nomad show I did back in Cathays as well. They were fantastic. They were really friendly to me, specifically because I remember getting a bit emotional afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, fantastic places to work around Wales, and it's nice to see so many promotions popping up now. You know, I remember when there was, I remember there was like one promotion in Wales, and that was it. Yeah, and now there's 4 or 5.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Cardiff.
Well, I'm learning. Well, this is it. I'm learning more about the Welsh wrestling scene all the time. And like I say, I've actually got Mike Bird coming on the show next week,
Nice.
live on the Wrestling with Jonas podcast. So I'll be learning even more about the Welsh wrestling scene through Mike. But we'll talk more about Attack Pro Wrestling a bit later, Mike, because I really want to get into Attack Pro Wrestling, and there's a couple of reasons why, and you mentioned some of them already. But I want to talk about WWE and NXT UK, and I'm sure anybody watching this might already know, and wrestling fans around the world will know that WWE, they unfortunately closed the doors. They made the decision not to continue with the NXT UK brand. It was probably last month or very early September. Which was extremely sad news. And like I say, I followed the brand from day one. And like I say, I thought at certain points it was the best hour of wrestling you'd find anywhere in the world. And like I say, not just because I'm from the UK and a fan of a lot of the talent on the roster, but it was that good, especially when you had some of the UK takeovers, and we'll talk about some of them. But how did you first find out that NXT UK was being discontinued or having the doors closed on that brand there, Mike?
It was so we just it's difficult to kind of say, really. It just kind of happened. Yeah, no, it just kind of happened. They explained the situation to us, and it was like, okay, well, there we are. That's that. Yeah, it's not really a long, interesting story, if I'm honest with you. It was just kind of like, this is the decision. This is what we're doing. Yeah.
And I mean, because you, along with many other of the talent from NXT UK, were kind of let go from their contracts after, I think you'd been with the company over 4 years, Mike. But I mean, emotionally and on a personal level, kind of how did you feel, like say, having spent the last 4 years under that banner with, like say, all the other amazing talent under the NXT UK brand? It must have been maybe, I don't know, a bittersweet moment, knowing that, like I say, you're not going to be under the WWE banner anymore, but you get an opportunity to get out on the road on the UK Indies. But what were your emotions during that time?
So when I initially got the call, it was a bit like, oh God, okay, what am I going to do now? And then it's like, okay, well, all right, well, I can either be upset about this, and I can let it kind of consume me a little bit, and then that just doesn't help anyone. Or I could think of it as, well, I've had a great 4.5 years here. I've learned a lot. I've worked with Shawn Michaels, Regal, Matt Bloom, Johnny Moss, Robbie Brookside, James Mason, just to name a few. So I know myself that I'm a better wrestler than I was when I first came here. So I'm thinking, right, well, I can get out there now. I can get back on the indies. I can make decisions for myself where I want to work and where I don't want to work, who I want to work with, etc. And I can show the world on my terms what type of performer, what type of wrestler that I am now. And like I said, I'm very confident that I'm a much better performer, much better wrestler, much all-around wrestler now than I was 4.5 years ago. So a very positive off the back of that initial, oh shit, what am I going to do? The stability is gone. But then without that stability comes a little bit of weirdly excitement. Like, okay, well, the world's my oyster now. I've always wanted to go to Japan. That's always been a goal for me ever since I first started wrestling. So now that actually becomes a thing that I could do. I've always wanted to wrestle all around the world, and that is now a thing that I can do.
Yeah.
So as much as it was sad, and it was, I loved working there. They were very good to me, especially when I had that injury. They were very, very good to me. But it's just an exciting prospect to kind of be out there now and, okay, what can I achieve on my own now? What can I do with this version of myself,
Absolutely, absolutely, and very well said. Like I say, it's great to have that positive mindset. Like I say, obviously there was that initial disappointment, but then thinking, crikey, now the world is my oyster, and I'm my own kind of booker, and I can kind of go wherever I want and whoever wants me. And I know you're getting plenty of bookings, but just thinking back to when you first started with the brand, and am I right in thinking that your very first match inside a WWE ring was inside the hallowed halls of the Royal Albert Hall back in 2018? I think it was during the second UK tournament they did there in 2018. Was that your first match inside a WWE ring, Mike?
That is correct.
That's crazy.
And I found out about it on the morning of.
No.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, does that give you enough time to kind of prepare? And I'm guessing that you go into the building anyway, and like I say, being told on the day must have I don't know, been an interesting experience for you.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was quite cool. I mean, like if you don't. In my head anyway, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was kind of hoping that I was hoping I'd get to do something that weekend.
Yeah.
Didn't think it'd be a singles match to open the second show. But there we are. You know, like I said, if you're a professional, you know what you're doing, you know how to do it, you're confident in your abilities. If you're in a position like that, or you're asked to be in a position like that, then you just go, okay, yeah, let's do it. You know, and I remember when I actually got to the venue, it was actually Pete Dunne who told me that that was happening. He just seen the sheet and he came up to me. He was like, "You're on today, you know that, right?" I was like, "Am I? Am I?" He was like, "Yeah, you're on first." I was like, "Oh shit, okay, that's sick. Wicked. Wait, well, job done then." You know?
There you go. Yeah.
So I remember, and I initially wasn't a part of the tournament, and I think I was one of a handful of people who were signed at the time, but not in the actual tournament. So I remember being a bit like bummed out about it. Yeah. But in hindsight, would I rather wrestle my first match at Download, or because that's where some of the other quarterfinals and stuff were, or would I rather my first match be in at Royal Albert Hall?
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of lucked out there, and it was a really incredible experience.
Absolutely.
To be able to do that.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Look at
madness.
That. Beautiful.
Madness. Absolute madness. And what a show that was as well. Both days, incredible. I remember Undisputed Era against Mustache Mountain being absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. Like madness.
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was. And to take us back to when you first signed, or when you first got signed, because I understand you got an interesting story of when yourself and Flash were kind of putting pen to paper. But I'm guessing you signed kind of earlier on that year then, Mike?
Yes, we did. Yes, we signed a few months before that. And the story the story you're on about is when me and Flash were backstage at the O2, and we had our contracts in front of us. And Flash went to me, right, on 3 we'll sign. And we looked at each other, we were like, yeah, 1, 2, 3, boom. Okay, signed at the same time. And that was kind of a cool little moment for us, because obviously I've known Flash for too long. Way too long. I've known
pretty much all your life, I would say.
most of my life at this point. More than half of my life at this point. I remember we used to like backyard in my garden. We used to like build rings in my garden and up the valley mountains and stuff like that. And build, we used to steal builders' cage, the big steel cages that they kind of box off the building sites.
Yeah,
we used to steal them and make like steel cages and put carpet on the floor. And we'd have steel cage cell matches and stuff like that. So I have known him since then. So to get to the point where we were signing our WWE contracts at the same time at the O2 Arena in London was madness. It's something that you just don't think is ever going to happen, especially from when you're two boys from random valley that we're from. It's just not a thing that anyone thinks is going to happen. So
yeah. Yeah. And then, like I say, on top of that, after the Royal Albert Hall show and the brand was announced, shortly after was the initial TV tapings, and it was kind of became a weekly TV show. As I mentioned, probably the hottest hour of pro wrestling anywhere in the world. I think it was every single Thursday night. I remember watching it. And in fact, the Wrestling with John's podcast started actually reviewing NXT on a weekly basis. So I did that for the first year or so.
Oh, wow,
certainly
okay.
the first 6 to 9 months before I interviewed anybody.
Oh,
It was purely focused on NXT UK and reviewing that every single week. But take us back to some of them early tapings then, Mike, because you were still in singles competition, very much singles competition back in them early tapings. I think it was like Cambridge, Birmingham, Plymouth, Liverpool. And then there was a set of tapings after the very first takeover in Blackpool as well. And you were part of all of those, sometimes in dark matches, sometimes actually as part of the show itself. But being quite a fresh and new product, it must have been quite exciting, not just from a fan's perspective, but also from a talent's perspective as well, Mike.
Yes, 100%. So it was a different way of wrestling. It was a different way you had to think, and the general way that everything's the day-to-day of how the shows are run. So obviously an independent show, you just turn up at a undisclosed time, and then you kind of do the match, you leave. TVs, you arrive a lot earlier. You're staying in a fucking lovely hotel, bus to and from the venue, catering, nice bit of food. You ain't got to worry about anything really apart from your match. So it's quite cool to have some of the pressure taken off in that aspect, to be replaced by another lot of pressure when you got to be in ring doing your thing with Shawn Michaels watching you, Triple H watching you, others watching you, and just having to kind of like I said, think about different things. But it's such a great learning curve having to do those things, because you kind of, as a Royal Albert Hall, as an example, right? I always think, and this is what I tell some trainees as well, who get nervous and stuff through certain matches, right? Is I always just think, if you do something which totally takes you out of your comfort zone, anything, so if like Royal Albert Hall is up here, and then you're nervous as hell before going out there, odds are it's going to be a big thing to get anything above Royal Albert Hall, which takes you to a nervous place again. So anything below that, in theory, you should be fine with. And that's how I always kind of thought about it. So with that type of stuff in mind, I always just thought, right, well, I did this, Yeah. So I always want to take that next bit and then, okay, so this is the next bit. So I concentrate. I'll have that confidence that I gained from doing other things. And I'll try and use that to do a good job and do the best I possibly can. And then we'll move on, right? And I feel like wrestling is really good for that, because it puts you in such weird scenarios that you don't really, you can't anticipate, because that's just the way it is.
Constantly stretching your comfort zones, I'm sure.
Yeah, massively. You can come up to a show thinking this is gonna be an easy night. This is gonna be a night that I understand. This is what I think is gonna happen today, and I'm not. And it's relatively easy. Then the day goes a certain way, and then you turn up to the show, and then you're like, okay, well, this is not how I thought today was gonna go. Shit.
Yeah.
And then you have to do something. You have to overcome that.
Yeah. But those experiences kind of like stretch us as human beings, and yourself as a performer. And like I say, we learn from those experiences. But Mike, we've had our first live question come through, and it's from Dennis Day Jr., who's watching us all the way from the United States. Thank you for watching us, Dennis. I'd like to know how much of an adjustment, if any, Mike had to make when he signed with NXT UK. So coming from the UK Indies, being a top prospect on the UK Indies, going to WWE and NXT UK, did you have to make any adjustments? And if so, what were they, Mike?
I think the adjustment I made was do more of what I do. Because we were expressly told, nobody here is signed for something they can change. Everyone here is signed because they do what they do well. So what I found is I just did what I did, more of it. If I was nasty, if I was aggressive, I hit hard, I just did more. Did more. Maybe looked at things in a certain different way. You speak to certain people who can give you advice to say, okay, that was good. Now look at it this way. Maybe do some things this way and that way, which isn't necessarily changing anything. It's just evolving what the type of wrestler you have. I feel like sometimes the place gets a rep for, okay, we sign you and then we change everything about you, which in some cases that does happen. But with NXT UK, that really wasn't the case. It was everyone was there for a reason. They was there to improve everyone, I thought. And I do think everyone was made way better for being there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one thing I loved about the NXT UK brand was they didn't go out of their way to change anybody. They just focused on how to kind of emphasize the positives and give everybody the opportunity to go out there and do what they do best. But one kind of moment I want to talk to you about, and now I think it was in November 2018, and the WWE were over here in the UK on a UK tour, and you had the opportunity to be on a WWE house show or live event show in Cardiff at the Motor Point against Mark Andrews, didn't you? So with the biggest and the best names in the industry on the WWE roster over here, you was on that card with Mark Andrews in front of, I should imagine, friends, family from the local area. That must have been a real buzz for you.
It was, yeah, it was mad. Considering I remember wrestling specifically wrestling Mark, expressly working Mark and working with Mark for the first 2 years of my career, all up and down Wales in smaller venues up and down Wales, random rugby clubs and stuff like that. And then we get the chance to wrestle at the Motor Point Arena, which is in Wales, it is one of obviously Principality is the arena, but the Motor Point is the other arena, Yeah. So it's a really cool moment to be able to do that. And I remember finding out about it as well. Mark was the one who kind of said, "Oh, you've seen this," and he showed me all the stuff, and I was like, "What are we? Oh, this is what we're doing." And I remember the date of the show was the date of my late grandfather's birthday, right, which I found an incredible coincidence. So that was really cool, and everyone backstage was really fucking sound. I had some great advice off people backstage and stuff like that, and producers who were looking after the show. So it was a really good experience. And again, crowd.
Were you looking for friends and family in the audience, Mike? Were you looking out there for seeing if you recognised anybody?
I didn't bother. I didn't see the point. Anyway, I wasn't going to see him. I was just looking at this massive, the sea of humanity that was there,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When NXT UK really got going, and I know in 2019 the TV show had been established, and then you started teaming with Primate, didn't you, in The Hunt? Now, going back through your records, I think you might have teamed or worked with Primate maybe a few years earlier. But when were you first approached about starting this team with Primate, The Hunt, on their TV show? And was it a kind of an idea that you was kind of fully behind at the time?
So the first time we wrestled, we worked with these. We only teamed up once before.
Yeah.
Outside of WWE, that was NGW, and I think it was a very similar basis as to why we were put together, because we have a similar style. We're both kind of animals, named after animals. I don't know, yeah. And then we tagged once in WWE against the Grizzled Young Veterans, not as The Hunt. And then I think going forward, we had a conversation, was like, okay, I think we might use you as a tag team. And then we had a conversation with certain individuals of the roster, and the name The Hunt was suggested, and we pitched The Hunt as a tag name. And that's what we went with. And then we were used quite well. I thought we had some really good matches with the likes of Imperium, Gallus. We had like Pretty Deadly's first matches there. And those boys are wicked,
Yeah.
Who else did we wrestle?
You had a nice little feud with Mark Andrews and Flash, didn't you? In I think it was 2020.
Yes, unfortunately, I didn't get to finish it because I did my knee in, but we were off and running with that.
Yeah.
When we had Eddie Dennis with us.
Yeah. And I mean, Eddie's made a triumphant return to the UK Indies himself, and has had some great showings in Progress and various other companies. But I would say that was a lot of fun. And what were some of your favourite moments teaming with Primate, like say in 2019 and 2020?
So I really liked the matches we had with Imperium. To be honest, they were incredibly physical. And it was kind of a bit of a trial by fire, I thought, for us, to be honest, because the one day we had to wrestle, we had to wrestle Pretty Deadly, and we had to wrestle Imperium on the same day. And I remember it was a bit like, oh, okay, right, now we go in, now we gotta go, now we gotta get our heads into it, and we gotta like sort this tag team chemistry out, right? We had good chemistry anyway.
Yeah.
We just kind of worked quite well together. But it's a different thing with getting that tag chemistry right, because we hadn't worked together a whole lot or wrestled each other a whole lot. It was kind of like learning on the job a lot with me and Primate, and I thought those matches really helped us a lot. And the Grizzled Young Veterans, working with the Grizzled Young Veterans, it was really such a learning curve as well. Incredible tag team, you know. So
yeah.
Like working with the vets, working with Imperium. We had some fun ones with Gallus too. So for me, those are my highlights.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about the dog collar match in a minute, the 2022 match with Eddie Dennis. But we did have another question, because when you came back after your injury, and you was out for about a year, weren't you, Mike? But when you came back, you teamed a fair bit with Mark Andrews. Now, the next question is via Darren Ewan. Ewan via Facebook. How would you sum up your experience in NXT UK? And would you like to have had more matches in NXT UK tagging with Mark Andrews? So would you like to have had more matches with Mandrews on the NXT UK brand? Do you think you could have done more teaming with him?
I think so, yeah. I mean, like in terms of like when I was talking about chemistry earlier in ring chemistry, he might be one of the people that I have the most chemistry with, purely because we've faced each other so many times. So we used to help each other move in the ring and this and the other. So I definitely would have liked to do more tagging with Mark and see what we could have done and what type of things we could have done in ring together, you know. And obviously Mark is made a really good friend of mine. So we always kind of gelled and had some really cool ideas, and it was always real good working with him.
Yeah,
that was a fun one as well.
You had a shot of the NXT UK tag team titles, didn't you, against Brooks Jensen and Josh Briggs, which was another really fun match. But let's talk about the match that I've been alluding to then, and that's this one here, the dog collar match with Eddie, of course. Now, of course, he was the mastermind behind the Hunts. He was the mastermind behind Symbiosis. But of course, you know, obviously, you came back, had this feud with Eddie Dennis, because I think he set T-Bone and Primate on you in this angle, which covered your injury. And when you came back, you was out for blood, weren't you? And had that amazing dog collar match. And I think that was probably your standout singles moment during your NXT UK run. I don't know if you'd agree with me.
I would agree.
I think many people would say the same. But tell us about that match, because I know that you know Eddie very, very well. But that must have been a lot of fun to put together and a lot of fun to execute as well.
It was incredibly violent. It was tell you what, those chains, you don't think that they're going to work the way they do, and that isn't necessarily, when you look at it, it's not exactly a heavy chain, but it sucks when it hits you,
I bet.
And also what you don't think about is should you fall over or should you get thrown, the chain is then going to go whoosh after you, and then you don't know where that chain is going to land. So there's a few times where like it would have hit myself or Eddie in the face, and it's just like, oh shit, like, you know. And it's, even though it's not that heavy, if chain like that hits you in the face, in the nose, when you're not expecting it, that sucks.
Yeah,
sucks, man. And getting hit with that chain sucks. That just fucking sucks.
Yeah.
But it was really good. Really enjoyed it. It's a really good feeling when you come out of a match and you feel like you've put, you know, you've worked hard. You know, you did a good job. You know, of doing what you're meant to do, and that's one of those times. And you know you've done a good job when the next day you wake up and you feel like utter shit.
yeah, absolutely. But those are your kind of reminders of what a good match it was, I suppose, and how good a job you did. But I mean, just my final points on your WWE run, and I think, and I'm speaking for you here, you'll be able to kind of clarify, but probably the greatest thing about your time in NXTUK or under the WWE banner for as long as you were was that you were able to share that time and your experience with your closest friends in the whole world, not just in the wrestling world, but in your personal life with Mark Andrews, Flash, Eddie, and all the other UK talent and Welsh contingent that were there with you. But that's probably the best memories that you'll take with you from it, I would say. Yeah,
I mean, we had some incredible times there. We had to stay down there for numerous weeks of the month and stuff like that. We'd had some fantastic times. It's a crazy thing to think about working for the biggest wrestling promotion in the world. It's an even crazier idea to think about working for the biggest wrestling promotion in the world with your best friends and who you started wrestling with. And not just, who you started wrestling with around about 10 to 15 years ago. And in Flash's case, 20. So that alone is an incredible feat. And I feel like I'm quite proud of us, to be honest, that we did that, and on another note as well, everyone on the brand, I would have been around for years as well, right? Even though we're not in this, Scottish lads, for example. I know the Scottish lad, Noam, all the Coffees, Kenny and stuff like that. I've known them for years, just through being around at the same time. All people from London, Midlands boys. You just know, you just know them because we've all been around a similar length of time. So all the places they were working, I was working. So you kind of grow up with them in the business, and then we all kind of got signed together, same time, brought in together, had similar experiences. So it was a very cool thing. I think NXT UK was an incredibly cool thing to be a part of. I'm very grateful for it.
Absolutely. I'm going to take you all the way back in time now, Mike, and to talk about kind of your early days in the business. You touched upon the backyarding and everything like that, but I know in the mid to late 2000s, you used to wrestle quite a bit for Welsh Wrestling and Celtic Wrestling. But those days, those early years were quite crucial to your development, weren't they? And like I say, you were coming up through the business with some of the names we already mentioned, but how important were those days with some of them promotions that I mentioned to your career then, Mike?
So I blame, that's an interesting word. I credit Welsh Wrestling for teaching me how to wrestle. I might have learned how to bump and I might have learned how to this and the other at schools, but actually learning the business, I credit Welsh Wrestling for that. So yeah, this is crucial because, again, going back to the conversation we had earlier, there was no real wrestling in Wales. Celtic had stopped, really, and they weren't really running that often, and there was not a lot of people there I could work with to get better. Welsh Wrestling were using people like James Mason, who later become, recent years was a coach at NXT UK, so that's how good he is. But James Mason is a underrated figure, I think, in British wrestling for who and to him, he just wrestles. He just goes places and
Yeah.
and wrestles everyone. But to the people he's wrestling, he's making them better, right? And not only the people who watch him, I remember specifically not necessarily wrestling him yet, but just watching him and just looking at his movement, looking at how he did certain things, and just thinking, "Shit, me, okay, this is real now. This is a real pro." So yeah, back to the original question, Welsh wrestling, incredibly important for the amount, not only the who I was around, who I was working with, but also for the amount of reps that I got all around the country. I saw places of Wales I never knew existed, little towns I never knew existed, just through wrestling all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody watching live at home, there's still time to get your questions in for Wild Boar Mike Hitchman. So send them through to us, and we'll do our best to bring them up on screen and ask Mike before the end of this broadcast. But jumping a little bit further ahead now, Mike, and I want to talk about Attack Pro Wrestling. Now, it might be an indie group that not many people have heard of, but I know that it had its fan base from the late 2000s, early 2010s, all the way through. The reason why I bring this up is because Attack Pro Wrestling, it was the first indie experience I had back in 2014. It was late 2014, and coincidentally, you was on that card. Like I said, I think it was a Christmas kind of card. Let's see if I can bring up the name of the show, but I'll find it in a minute. But it was absolutely fantastic.
It would have been Mistletoe. It would have been the Mistletoe one of the nights, because we always
Santa's still real to us, damn it.
Oh,
two.
That was pre-Mistletoe.
Santa's still real to us, damn it, too.
Oh, that's.
And I mean, in that match, you had Flash Morgan Webster, who was playing Kevin out of Home Alone, and you had the Wet Bandits there. I think Dan Moloney might have been one of the Wet Bandits.
It was Dan Moloney and Nick Good.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you were there on that card playing the Grinch against Ryan Smile, who's playing Rudolph. Like I say, that was the very first experience of an indie show, and I want to credit Matt Bayliss, good friend of mine, who took me along to the Trinity Centre in Bristol back in late 2014. But any kind of recollections back to that show? Like I say, and I remember seeing you at the merch stand halfway through the match. I think that was probably before halfway through the show, I should say. But like I say, fun memories, fun times.
Attack Pro Wrestling is fun. We're talking about learning curves and learning certain things, and going up a level with your work and being that professional wrestler. For me, Attack Pro Wrestling took not only me but a bunch of different people on the wrestling scene. And to be honest, I think Attack Pro Wrestling took the wrestling scene up a notch. I think if you look back at what Attack was doing, Attack was doing certain things before other promotions were doing certain things. Whether they know it or not, I do believe certain people are looking at Attack and going, "Oh, that's a good idea." Or just thinking, "Oh, that's that. People like that. I like that. Let's do something similar." But that specific show you're on about, I know, and then we spoke about this earlier, right? So I'll mention it. I remember, so I was painted up green as the Grinch.
The Grinch, yeah.
As the Grinch. But I only did my top half. And this sticks with me. This is the only thing that sticks out of me with that show. Painted the top half in the face, didn't do my legs. And I was looking on Twitter afterwards, and just to see, what do people think of the match? And the only comment I remember is, "Oh, you didn't even paint his legs." I was like, "Oh, okay."
It's great feedback.
Fantastic. All right, I'll just go and I'll just go away. I'll just whatever. But yeah, those Attack so later became the Mistletoe. I think that might have been the second Christmas show that we did. They later became the Mistletoes, which we did. So it became, rather than doing one show on the Christmas period, we did like 2 or 3 shows on the Christmas period. We just ran all the venues. We would do like Bristol, Cheltenham, and Catays. Yeah, so we do them over a certain period of time. And they were just the highlight of the year for everyone. I think everyone was on those shows. It was a highlight of the year. It was fantastic. And they always had some mad, it was always, we'd have like snow holds barred matches where the weapons were like baubles and stuff like that. Flash would always want to be in a bloody Home Alone match. I did one with him this year. It's his favorite. Home Alone films are his favorite films, right? So when he got the chance to be able to do them, right, he would not shut up about them, right? Just not shut up. He loves those films so much. He was like getting a candy shop. He was doing their matches.
Yeah.
He was like running around. Oh, yeah. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, I was trying to think of anything else that went on.
Well, I'll tell you another thing that I remember about that show, and it was a very young Tyler Bate. Now, this was 2014. I think he probably came onto the scene maybe a year or so earlier. And even 2014, he was probably about 16 years old, maybe a bit younger, I'm not sure. And he was already jacked, already kind of close to being the finished article. And he was in a 2-on-1 match. And to look at him, you wouldn't realize he was so young. Like I say, he's already well developed physically and like I say, mentally in the ring. But really, really tremendous. And like I say, it was a bit of a launching pad. Attack Pro Wrestling was a bit of a launching pad. I'm going to read off some names here, but Pete Dunne, of course, Tyler Bate, yourself, Mark Andrews, Flash, Eddie, and so many more. You know, Chris Brooks was on the show regularly, Nixon Newell, and like I say, all the names that went on to do great things in the UK and internationally. So I think, as you said, Attack Pro Wrestling probably doesn't get the credit it deserves for what an important part it played in the kind of expansion or the explosion of Brit Wrestling.
I remember, I remember. I remember after Tyler and Pete did that WWE Match of the Year at TakeOver in Chicago.
Yeah.
I remember a week or 2 weeks later, they did a match in Attack where they were both each other and did that match.
I remember.
You are not, you were never going to see anything like that anywhere else. You're just not. And this, like, so not only was the in-ring some of the best going, but the stories and the everything surrounding the actual in-ring was fantastic. Like, absolutely mind-blowing how they were coming up with this stuff. But the characters you had Old Papa Sunflower, you had Love Making Demon, people like that. Then you had like the angles of like Pete Dunne feuding with Jim Lee, who was the ring announcer we used to wrestle, and culminating in like a big Survivor Series match, you know, which was insane. I remember if I wasn't involved in them, I was watching them, and I was just like a fan watching them, and I was losing my mind just watching these matches. I wouldn't want to get involved. I don't want to know what's happening. I'll do my thing, and then other people do their thing. So I was just watching, and I remember just loving them. Oh, such fun times, man. So the best times. Attack Pro Wrestling is the best.
Yeah, as soon as I finish this interview, I'm going to go and try and find my Attack DVDs and put some of those on. But I mean, one of the highlights from that show that I was in December 2014, I think that was the last match of Mark Andrews before he went over to the States to start wrestling for Impact as well. So that was quite a special moment to kind of be there to see him wrestle his last UK match before going over to America. So that's really, really cool. And I want to talk a bit about some of your accolades now, then, Mike. And I like lists, so I'm going to reel off this list. You're a former 5-time Attack 24/7 champion, a former Attack champion, a former 2-time Kings of Chaos champion, a former ICW Tag Team champion, and a former Scottish Junior Heavyweight champion, and so many more. I could go on forever and ever with your accolades, but tell us about some of your accolades, some of your championships, and that you're most proud of, and what they kind of mean to you today.
So the one that comes to mind is the Scottish Junior Heavyweight one was the SWA 01 Junior Heavyweight. I remember at the time, Scottish Wrestling Alliance was kind of like the Scottish base of 01 in Japan. As mentioned earlier, that Japan's always been a goal for me. So to win the inaugural tournament at the time and have that belt was really something cool for me, especially not being based in Scotland. So that going up there and winning it was really cool. And ICW winning the tag belts with Mike Bird in Newcastle was a fantastic moment. The crowd reaction was incredible. The reaction we had afterwards as well was really good. So that was just a really, really proud moment for me. Winning the Attack Pro Wrestling belt at London in the Dome from Flash Morgan Webster. Not that's the 24/7 one, but
right.
So yeah, actually I got the belt here. Thinking about it, still got it. but that winning the belt from Flash Morgan Webster at the Dome was really cool one for me because we had a good little build over a couple of months, and I was really proud of the match that me and Flash had that night. The 24/7 one throw was really fun as well. I remember winning it a few times in Cardiff High Street. It was quite fun.
Yeah, you can imagine that the 24/7 title defenses in Attack were nothing less than hilarious, if nothing else.
If we did that now with the people that we originally filmed that with, it would be an incredible sight because you would have had Mark, Chris Brooks, Tyler, Pete Dunne, myself, Eddie, Flash Morgan Webster running down Cardiff High Street, St. Mary Street or wherever, jumping off walls onto each other with one of the other people counting the fall. I mean,
brilliant.
Besides the fact we're all in our 30s, I think we'd have some mad looks from people who understood who we were and what we were doing.
Mike, that's got to happen. That's got to happen at some point. So you're going to have to get in touch with the boys and see if you can arrange it next time you're in the UK. Talk to us a bit about the Wild Boar gimmick, because I know that it's developed and it's evolved into what we know today. But first of all, when did the nickname Wild Boar come about and how did it come about?
So I got the nickname at when I was working for Welsh Wrestling. So initially came about, it's actually interesting. I think it's an interesting story. So for me, I just wanted to wrestle. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to wrestle. I wanted to get on shows and wrestle on a regular basis. So the promoter of Welsh Wrestling said to me, he was like, I want to use you. You good attitude and you're decent in the ring, but I need some sort of gimmick. I need some sort of thing for you because I don't just book wrestlers and because they're like family oriented crowds. He wanted something which was something a bit different, right? So I was having to think, he was having to think, and I remember coming up with for some reason he'd always wanted a clown gimmick, and to me I didn't care. I was just like, all right, I'll be a clown. And I remember just buying like face paint and like doing face paint on my face, right? And I don't know if you know the CZW wrestler Joker.
Yeah.
So I've heavily based the clown. To me, I thought that's cool. If I'm going to be a clown, I can be a cool clown. So I just more or less ripped off that gimmick, right? I ripped off the cool face paint and I sent it to him. And I thought it looked pretty cool. And he was like, that's a bit too much. It's a bit too real, too scary. Maybe not. I was like, fuck, fair enough. I remember at the time as well, I was very into like Wild Pegasus matches in Japan. And the promoter knew this, and for some reason, I say for some reason, I'm kind of small, hairy, and a lot of teeth, and got a certain look. And he just suggested, he was like, "Do you want to be the Wild Boar? Wild Pegasus, Wild Boar." That's kind of how he sold it to me. I was like, "Oh, okay." Like I said, I didn't really care. I just wanted to wrestle and just kind of get in there and just be able to work,
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that came around, and then as I progressed. I had a lot of feedback off him and other people as well who would look at the character, look at me, look what I did in ring, and then I have certain advice like, oh, well, if you're Wild Boar, wouldn't you just do this and the other? And then it got me thinking like, okay, well, I'll behave this way and I'll work this way, and I'll make everything original to me. If this is who I am, then this is who I am in the ring. This is going to be as real as this is real to me. I will work this way, and this is how I will wrestle. This is how I will do it. and it gradually just evolved via trial and error.
Yeah.
In certain things, doing things in a certain way. And then
your offense is very unique, Mike. I mean, your offense, I mean, some of your moves, certainly the running kind of shoulder tackle, almost like a spear, and then your inverted cannonball senton into the corner, which is absolutely insane. And your package pile driver, like I say, your move set is very unique, but perfect for you. And like I say, that the character, just to take it one step further, I mean, look at, the mask. I know that you've gone the whole 9 yards with the contacts as well, but the gear, it's absolutely phenomenal. And of course, your jacket, certainly the one you use in NXT UK, had like either horns or tusks coming out of it as well. So it's obviously a gimmick and a persona and a look that's evolved to the point that we've got now, basically. But tell us a bit more about the look.
So you say with the contacts, I don't wear the contacts anymore, and the reason being is I thought I took it too far. I thought I took it too far with a certain way, and I was like, okay, this is not. I don't want to be this animal anymore. I don't want to just be this non personified thing in the ring. So I thought, right, I'll drop the contacts. I'll talk. I'll make sure that I can be related to as a person.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the evolution. So even though I've added stuff in terms of contacts and other things, taken away is also evolving that certain character, because it's you take things to a certain level and then you think, okay, well, this has gone too far now, so I can pull back and go a different way, because this is how I want to present myself and this is how I want to behave. And we talk about, like, it's an interesting concept to me, because we talk about characters and we talk about gimmicks and stuff like that. As much as being called the Wild Boar and this and the other is obviously some sort of fucking character and gimmick, it's not really, because if you drop me in a ring right now, that's just how I would act. It's just kind of how I do it. It's not, I don't really put it on per se, and that might sound quite weird, but it's not just, I don't just put it on as just kind of who and what I do.
Gotcha. 100%. We had another question before we went live tonight, Mike, and it's from Richie Stubbs via Facebook. Hello, welcome back. My favourite match of yours is against Dan Moloney in the Bingo Hall in Cardiff. I think that was just a short while ago, and a match that you were alluding to earlier on. But what is your favourite match that you've ever had? A really kind of interesting question, and it stumps a lot of my guests when they get asked this question. But have you got a favourite match that you've ever had then, Mike?
Firstly, thank you. That is one of my favorites for numerous reasons. But what was my favorite match? It's very hard question to answer that. So, to me, to judge a favorite match, I think I'm not going to be able to give you an answer. I can give you criteria of what I think makes a favorite match to me. It's when I performed better than I thought I could going in. So I did it and I came back and I thought, shit, I did, I'm happy with that. I did well, but not through confidence of before I went out there. It was more, I didn't think I was going to be able to do that, and I did it, and now I'm all the better for it. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
It was a very, very odd answer. I appreciate that, but
totally get it. Totally get it. And just to back up Richie there, it's a little photo from when you and the Driller were in the ring. I think that was possibly from the show that he was referring to. But like I say, he's come on leaps and bounds and having the time of his life, the year of his life. But one of the final questions from me then, Mike.
Going back to the favorite match answer. So as an example, that match is an example of being why it's one of my favorite matches is because I didn't know that was happening until 3 hours before it happened.
Wow.
Because for whatever reason, I was asked to do the show early on. I wasn't expecting to do it. I was at a family meal when the call came through, and I was like, this is like the day after, 2 days after I got released. And I was asked to do that, and I was kind of in my head a little bit like, well, I don't know, like, am I going to be able to do a match of what I'm expected to do, there? And did they? Had a fight with Dan, and came off the back of it like, shit me, I didn't think I was gonna be able to do something like that. After not doing anything like that for however long.
You surprised yourself,
I surprised myself. That's something that I consider to be a highlight for me in wrestling, is when I can come back and go, "Oh, I did well there, well done," because I'm a big critic of myself. So to come back and think, "Oh, you take something from that, be proud of that." That to me is what makes a favorite match.
Awesome, and thank you, Richie, again for sending in that question. Really, really awesome. But as we start to wind down, then, Mike, and a similar question to a certain degree. But do you have what are some of your proudest moments in your career? Now, you mentioned that you started backyarding at a young age and broke into the business at a young age, and you've been, let's say, all over the country, all over Europe. And like I say, joined the biggest wrestling organization in the world and back onto the Indies in 2022. But do you have any specific proud moments that you can look back on with pride?
Yeah, so it's debuting at the Royal Albert Hall is a really proud moment for me. Motorpoint Arena on that show was a really proud moment for me. The chain match, the dog collar match is a proud moment for me. A more recent one, like Dan Moloney, again, that working with Dan Moloney is a really proud moment for me because of the reason I just said.
Yeah.
Kind of just touching on what we were just talking about, to be honest, like the ICW moment when we won the tag belts.
Yeah.
Wrestling Gav, Wrestling Flash in London. But also one thing that really means a lot to me as I get on in wrestling is because I'm so heavily involved with coaching a lot of people. I have been for a long time with Dragon Pro for about 6-7 years before being involved with the coaching at New Wave that Brendan White runs in Newport. Having certain people's first matches as a really like Brendan White. I had Brendan White's first match in wrestling, which is a really proud moment for me. For numerous reasons, he was one of my best mates, and just looking at how far he's come on. Danny Jones, I didn't have his first match, but I remember being in the match where I thought, "Oh my God, he's got it! He's got it!" I remember, it was like a multi-man thing. I remember it was actually at Welsh Wrestling, as it goes. But I remember thinking, "Oh, he's got it! He's got it!" I had a big hand in training Nixon Newell. When she got signed, massively proud of her.
Yeah.
Danny Luna, big hand, still train her on a regular basis. And she's killing it. When she comes back off her knee injury, she's gonna be gone. She's gonna be one of the best, one of the top female talents in Europe, in my opinion. I mean, she already is, but I think when she can go, she can go. And then just to name a few, right? You got Bino. Incredible talent. Elijah I was talking about earlier. Splits McPins, Bowler Armor in general. And then you got your newer guys like James Ellis is,
great talent. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of names. I'm not bigging myself up with the coaching because what I mean by what I'm saying here is that all these guys put so much effort into training that it's so rewarding to see them see it pay off for them, because you can only, as a coach, you can only kind of reward what you see, right? So they put in the effort in, they're reaping the rewards from how much effort they put in, and how good they are, to be honest. And it's so humbling when people like Jay Josh was another one, but Splits McPins has been training with me and with the places that I've been involved in for, I think he might have been doing it for 8 years, and he could be up and down. Same with Elijah. These boys, they could be up and down. They are up and down the country working on a regular basis, but they still choose to come and train at the sessions that I train, and that is incredibly humbling, because, to be honest, they're just getting reps at this point. They're just getting reps. I can't, to me, they are my peers, we work out together at this point, but it's so cool to see these boys and these girls just reaping the rewards of all their hard work, and that is a proud moment.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they, have a ton of respect for you and a ton of respect for what you've done for the business. And like I say, a very exciting future for those individuals you've mentioned and for yourself. But before we go, an opportunity, Mike, for you to throw out your socials. So where any of my listeners or followers can reach out to you, say hi, get to know a bit more about Wild Boar, maybe see some of your matches or maybe buy some of your merch. And I do have your socials running along the bottom of the screen for Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. But the floor is yours, my friend.
So, if you just want to follow me on Instagram, Wild Boar Hitchman, I saw there. All the Twitter on the bottom there.
There we go.
I got my phone by actually.
Yeah, but just search Wild Boar or Wild Boar Mike Hitchman, and it comes up straight away, whatever platform you're on.
So I've had Pro Wrestling tees as well. Funny, I got some older t-shirts, so just been up on there. So we're going Pro Wrestling tees, search for Wild Boar.
There's the collection there.
Cartel. Yeah, you're the man. Okay. I have a big cartel as well. All links for that should be on my social media. Any shows and stuff that I'm on, I'll be posting on all my social media as it comes. So yeah, all them social medias.
Yeah, and we've got some match graphics for some up-and-coming matches, and I think this is possibly one of your next ones against Kid Lykos, and you mentioned Kid Lykos earlier on. That's going to be a tremendous match, once again from the Bingo Hall in Cardiff. And then, of course, you've got this one here, which I believe is in Ireland, Fight Factory Pro Wrestling against Martin Steer, and that's going to be October the 21st. And then a little way off, but in November, you are scheduled to be facing good friend of yours, Eddie Dennis. And what promotion is that for? That's in Swansea, but I'm not sure of the promotion.
That's ran by Defend.
Right, of course. Yeah. And then tying yourself and Eddie together, you're going over to Canada to do some coaching and some things there with Eddie. So very exciting times, and like I say, you're going to be a busy man. You have been a busy man already, but some fun matches and some fun experiences to be had there, Mike. Yeah,
man, definitely can't wait.
Absolutely. And before we let you go, I just want to announce who my next guest on Wrestling with John is going to be, and just bring up the graphic here. I announced it first off last week, and it is the aforementioned Mike Bird. I don't know if he goes by the name Flying Mike Bird anymore, but Mike Bird. Yeah, I saw him at the tram shed in Cardiff a few weeks back, and I tell you what, he hadn't missed a step. He hasn't lost a step there at all. But next Monday, so not too many days, about 5 days away, I'll be speaking to Mike Bird on Monday the 10th, live on Wrestling with John's podcast, 8 p.m. UK time. That is an interview you are not going to want to miss, because Mike Bird don't tend to do interviews. He's quite likes to keep himself to himself. So that'll be interesting to hear from his own mouth, and to listen about his wrestling journey and his history. And I'm sure Mr. Hitchman will probably come up in one or two stories, but that's going to be a fantastic interview with Mike Bird, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But there we go. Definitely tune in for that. But before we let you go then, Mike, and it's been fascinating speaking to you for the last hour and 15 minutes. But if you've got a final message for your friends, fans, followers, and possibly, you know, anybody in the business that might be watching this, if you've got a message for them now that you're back on the indies, and you know, for all their support and love, what would you like to say to them, Mike?
Put me on the spot now. I don't know. I just love wrestling.
Yeah,
love wrestling. Enjoy it. It's the best.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. But Wild Boar, Mike Hitchman, thank you so much for being an excellent guest, my friend, and I'll see you down the road.
Mate. Thank you.
Thank you.